the bird yet? I'll tell you what bird this reminds me of. It reminds me of... Hi guys, and welcome to Buddy's Review. Today we are reviewing the Type 61 Tier 9 Japanese medium tank. But before we get into this, one thing I'd like to say. Usually I have a clip of this tank in action at the end of the review, but I'm going to do something a little different, guys. I am actually going to put a link to this clip of this tank in action. So after this review, click on the link and you can actually see this tank in action, and it actually did pretty well. So it's actually a pretty good game, so you might want to take a look at it. But before we get into the World of Tanks version of this tank, let's take a look at the real Type 61, and this is it. Now, the Type 61 was built from 1961 to 1975 with a total of 560 of these tanks built. It comes with a crew of 4. It weighs 35 tons. It has 55 millimeters of hull armor and 114 millimeters of turret armor. The gun that comes with it is a 90 millimeter L52 rifle cannon, so you can take out those cars that are in your way. And the top speed on this is 45 kilometers per hour, so you can cruise down the boulevard nice and easy. Now, I'm not trying to sell you this tank. I just want to give you a little history of this tank. But there's one thing interesting about Japan. At the end of World War II, they were not, in the treaty that they signed, they were not allowed to ever have a standing army again. So, buddy, how does Japan have this tank back in the 60s and 70s? Well, there was a little conflict in Korea. A lot of people called it the Korean conflict, the police action of Korea, or the Korean War. And when this happened, the American forces that were stationed in Japan actually had to go help fight the Korean War, and the UN decided to allow Japan to actually start a defensive force. It's called the Japan Ground Self-Defense Forces. Now, they are allowed to only build up enough so they can defend themselves. They're not allowed to go outside their borders. They're not allowed to advance or attack any other countries. So that's why Japan now has tanks again. But because of that little conflict we had back in the 50s, and guess what, guys? We're still having that conflict today. So that's a little history of this tank. Let's take a look at the World of Tanks version of this thing. Now, this isn't a bad looking tank. Nice 360-degree tank. One thing it reminds me of, it looks like a bird. Can you all see the bird? No? Now can you see the bird? See the two eyes? The Japanese flags, the two red eyes of this. Do you see the bird yet? I'll tell you what bird this reminds me of. It reminds me of a woodpecker. Here's the head of it. Here's the feather of the bird. And here's the beak. Kind of looks like a woodpecker to me. But hey, what do I know? Now, before we get into a whole bunch of details, let's show you how to get to this tank. Let's take a look at the Japanese tech tree. Now, the Japanese tech tree is the simplest tech tree there is in World of Tanks. There's two lines. There's the light line and the medium line. Now, the light line only goes up to Tier 4. Now, to get down the medium line, of course, you got to start off with a Tier 1. And then you go down the medium line, and it's a straight shot. You can't get lost. And you go all the way up to the Tier 9. And as you can see, I currently have the Tier 4 light tank in stock, the Tier 1 light tank in stock. I have the premium tank in my garage, and I also have kept the Tier 7, Tier 8, and of course I have the Tier 9. So let's take a look at how it comes. Now, this tank comes with this right here. It's not bad for a Tier 9 startup tank. It comes with a Tier 9 gun, not a Tier 8. So that's actually pretty good. The accuracy on these guns are actually pretty good. And the one thing I like about the Japanese line, and this happens throughout the whole Japanese line, is the gun depression on this tank. It can almost, I've actually been up on a ridge, this able to poke my gun down below where I can shoot at the tank and they can't shoot at me because all they see is my gun. That's how good the gun depression is on this tank. And I've also been in a valley shooting up, and the elevation of this gun is actually excellent too. Along with the accuracy, it has good gun depression and good elevation of the gun. So that's the whole line, guys. That's one thing I like about it. Now, it comes with a tier 8 turret and you can get tier 9 research on the turret. It comes with a tier 9 radio and you can get a tier 10 radio. You start off with a tier 8 engine and you can upgrade to a tier 9 engine. Same with the tracks, tier 8 to tier 9. And the gun on this is actually a good tier 10 gun, and I'll go over that a little bit later. Let's get back to the garage. And let's actually take a look at some of the specs of this tank. I'm going to try to get it so you can read it, and I'm actually going to blow this up for you all so you can read it. Oops. Okay, now the specs on this gun, and I gotta move my XSplit down, excuse me guys. Sorry about that, guys. Did not mean to do that. Okay, now it comes with 1,700 hit points. The weight on this is 35.4 and max weight is 38 tons. The engine on this is 604 horsepower. Top speed on this is actually 47.6 kilometers per hour, which is actually faster than the real tank. The traverse speed on this is 8 degrees per second. I'll go over the hull, and the turret on this, as you can see right now, is 75, 35, and 25. I'm sorry, 55, 35, and 25. 70, 60, and 35. And I'll go over the gun a little bit later. Now, the traverse speed of the turret is 40 degrees per second. The view range on this is 400 meters, and the signal range is maxed at 750. So that's not bad at all, guys. Now, I did skip a part, and I will show you why a lot of people don't like this line. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring up my tank inspector so you can take a look at it. Now, this is the tank inspector. And this allows me to go over and show at different angles the armor, and I can take a look at all the tanks in in any of the lines. But let's take a look at what the tank inspector says about this. Now you got 55 millimeters of armor on the hull, but you take a look at it because of the slope. Take a look at the slope of this angle of this front turret, and look at 128 head on. 96 millimeters. Even the underbelly has 92 millimeters. So I mean, the armor is actually thicker because of the angles on this. Now the turret on this thing has 70 millimeters of armor, and because it's rounded and all that, it's actually hard to hit, and you get a lot of ricochets on it. Now, this is what a lot of people are worried about. It has 35 millimeters of armor on the side, but you go up here, it only has 30 millimeters of armor on the side, and it is angled. So you gotta be leery of your side shots. Now, the turret has 60 millimeters of armor, but it has a weak spot. These two areas right here, it has 40 millimeters of armor or thicker, depending on it, but it's also rounded, so it does do some ricochets on there. So you just gotta be leery. You gotta basically hide this tank as much as possible. The rear hull on this has 25 millimeters and 35 millimeters on the turret. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, do not play this as a brawler. Play this tank. There's two ways to play this tank in the whole Japanese medium line. This is the way I played it, and I use them as snipers. Now this tier 9, I've also used as a scout. So there's a lot of ways you can actually use this tank. Now let's take a look at the gun on this thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow this up so you can read this a lot better. If you're like me, I have bad eyes. Okay, it comes with a 105 millimeter rifle gun, which is of course a 105 caliber gun. Rate of fire on this is 6 rounds per minute. The damage is 258, 330, and 53. I'm sorry, that's penetration. Damage is 390, 390, and 480. Accuracy on this gun is 0.36 at 100 meters. So that means where you aim is where basically you're going to shoot. The aiming time on this thing is 2.3 seconds. And the weight is 1,150. Now, the ammunition that comes with this thing is actually unique. The normal round for this gun is an APCR, or armor-piercing composite rigid shell, which is what most people call the gold round. This is the normal round for this tank. Now the gold round on this tank is the high explosive anti-tank shell, which is the gold round, and it also has HE, or high explosive rounds on it. Now I'll show you what I have stocked in the way of mods on this thing. I got binoculars, because I use this tank as a sniper. I got the gun rammer, medium caliber gun rammer, and I also carry vents on this tank. And the reason why I carry vents on this tank is to help increase the cruise. Now I have been grinding this crew up, and it only has 2 perks on it right now, but I'm hoping by the time I get to tier 10 I'm almost through my 3rd perk. So that's the tank itself. I hope you enjoyed this review of the Type 61, and I hope you consider going down the Japanese line, because it is a actually good medium line. If you know how to play the tank and play it correctly, it will actually do a lot of damage. All the tiers will actually do a lot of damage in it. So that's it for the review of that. I do have a link at the end of this video to the replay of World of Tanks with Buddy 1927 of this tank in action. Take a look at it, because it actually does a lot of damage, and it's actually a good game. I have a new partner in YouTube. It's Marky Dragons Network. A link down below. If you're a YouTuber and you're looking for a YouTube partner, there'll be a link down below. And I have recorded this program using XSplit, and I can also use XSplit for broadcasting. It's an excellent program. If you want to check it out, a link down below will be there too. Now guys, if you get a chance, share this video with your friends, like us, and if you have any comments about this video, or any comments you want direct towards me, just leave it down below there in the comments, and I will take them as they come. And if you haven't done this yet, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, so that way you get the latest videos, the latest update of my videos. I am going to be trying to do at least 2 to 4 videos a week on World of Tanks, and maybe some other videos on top of that. So if you get a chance, subscribe to my channel. I'd like to thank you again for watching Buddy's review, and save some tanks on the battlefield for me.